Three former Democratic presidential hopefuls are now putting their support behind Joe Biden. Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Beto O'Rourke all endorsed the former vice president on Monday. Buttigieg suspended his bid for the White House Sunday. Klobuchar ended her campaign Monday, and O'Rourke dropped out of the race in early November. Here's some of what Buttigieg and Klobuchar said about Biden in Dallas on Monday, just one day ahead of the Super Tuesday primaries in Texas.
And it is in the name of that very same goal that I'm delighted to endorse and support Joe Biden for president. I'm looking for a president who will draw out what is best in each of us. And I'm encouraging everybody who was part of my campaign to join me because we have found that leader in Vice President, soon to be President, Joe Biden.
We need to unite our party and our country, and to do it not just with our words, but with our actions. It is up to us, all of us, to put our country back together, to heal this country, and then to build something even greater. I believe we can do this together. And that is why today I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden for president.
For more now, I want to bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. She's in Houston. Caitlin, Buttigieg and Klobuchar are both poised to back Biden. And in an interview on Monday, Biden told our Houston affiliate KHOU that he would ask Buttigieg to be a part of his administration if he were to become the nominee. He also called Klobuchar a, quote, great talent. I know you spoke with the vice president today, so I'm wondering what more you can tell us about what went into their decisions to support Biden.
Hi, Lana. That's right. Former Vice President Joe Biden told us that when he talked to Buttigieg, he encouraged him to kind of stay in this fight, to stay engaged. He called him a big talent in the Democratic Party and said he has a big future in the party. I think when you see the endorsements coming from Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, both suspending their campaigns over the past 48 hours to support Joe Biden, I think that shows that first, neither of them saw a path to the nomination, saw any kind of clear path to the nomination. They also knew that by staying in this race for a prolonged period of time, even to see how they did in Super Tuesday states, would continue to likely fracture the party, especially as Bernie Sanders continues to have the momentum. Tomorrow is Super Tuesday here in Texas and California. California is where Bernie Sanders is very well positioned and leading in most polls. So this was an effort by the more traditional Democrats in this race to get behind someone that they see as a potential frontrunner as the race narrows, and especially for Joe Biden coming off that big win in South Carolina. This was the day that his campaign had been waiting for people to suspend their campaigns and get in line behind him.
And Caitlin, when you say that the vice president encouraged Buttigieg to, quote, stay in the fight, it was to stay in the fight behind him, though, right? Not to remain in running for the presidency.
That's right. He wants him to stay engaged in politics, to continue to run for other offices, he said. But this is a really important endorsement that Joe Biden is getting from Pete Buttigieg. Remember, Pete Buttigieg entered this race claiming the kind of fresh face mantle, talking about moving the Democratic Party forward while also kind of tacking to the center on a lot of policies. So this seems like a good fit, and there are questions about whether this will bring Buttigieg supporters over. It's important to note that in California and Texas, where I am here, people have been voting already. So does this influence the remaining voters? I also know, though, that endorsements are really key because lots of voters we've talked to are often paralyzed by all the decisions that they have, all the choices that they have, and just want someone to kind of pick a nominee and they'll show up in November. So we could see a little bit of that playing out as well.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm really curious, Caitlin, how Buttigieg supporters have been reacting to these developments, especially since he did actually better than Biden in both Iowa and in New Hampshire. I've heard from some who feel like they want to put their support elsewhere now. Does it seem like they're all going to now line up behind Biden?
It's really difficult to tell because we can see in polling that a lot of Buttigieg supporters also liked Elizabeth Warren. They kind of shared voters in the kind of college-educated voters lane. But it's also important to note that, as you know, when we're talking to voters, a lot of times they don't fit themselves in a particular lane. They like a lot of different candidates for a lot of different reasons that may not make sense when you look at the data, but that's how they feel. So there is this question about how much this can bring over. But it does speak to the sense of urgency, I think, that Democrats are feeling about narrowing down this field quickly. And those Democrats who don't want to see Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket want an alternative that a lot of people can rally around. So I think that's kind of this moment that you're seeing in the campaign right now.
Is that what's really behind it? I mean, we've heard the president essentially say that establishment Democrats are really concerned about Bernie Sanders, and so they want to stunt him, and that's why they're all coalescing behind Biden. I'm wondering if there's a sense among voters that you're speaking with that this might be too soon. Really, only 3.9% of voters have had a chance to weigh in at this point, right, Caitlin?
That's right. It's still early on. Tomorrow is the really big day because about a third of the delegates will be at stake in those contests. And so that's why a lot of people have been kind of looking to the Super Tuesday contest, where 14 states and 1 territory will weigh in on this primary process, because this would give a better indication or a broader indication of how the country is feeling. And there still are several primaries to go. The following weeks, we'll see Florida and Ohio and Wisconsin and other big states where a lot of delegates are up for grabs as well. But I think this is kind of a crystallizing moment that the party is having right now, because, as we've talked about before, the #1 priority for Democratic voters is finding a candidate that can defeat Donald Trump. Now, I'm interested to see if this coalescing that we're seeing behind Biden ends up fueling Bernie Sanders supporters even further. Bernie Sanders likes to talk about how he's running against the Democratic establishment as much as he's running against the Republican establishment. And we've seen that he's been able to garner some broad support, especially among young voters, and in Nevada demonstrated his ability to build a coalition among Latino voters. Joe Biden is taking that win in South Carolina as a demonstration that he can do really well among African-American voters, who are a key constituency across these Super Tuesday states and beyond into the general election. So I think that's kind of where we're seeing things go right now, and I think we'll have more data points tomorrow.
Well, and to play off of that, I'd actually like to play for our viewers a little bit of your interview with the former vice president. You asked Biden if he sees the race as a contest just between him and Senator Sanders right now. Let's take a listen to that.
Well, look, I'm not going to be the pundit. I think that there's going to be a real choice that the Democrats are going to have to make between a revolution and results. I admire Bernie, but I think that what he's proposing is he keeps calling for this revolution. I think people are looking for results. I think people are looking for who can get things done and get them done in a realistic fashion that are really progressive. I think I have a program that does much more than Bernie can do.
Caitlin, you've been at rallies for both Senator Sanders and for the former vice president. Tell me, on that point that Biden brings up, has he been able to really ignite people around what Democrats say is their #1 priority, which is defeating President Trump?
Well, they represent two very different visions for the future of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders has been talking about changing things up, that it's not enough to kind of just return things back to normal. That's been part of his MO for a while now. We've seen Joe Biden, though, talk about getting things back on track, back to the way things were before Donald Trump took office. He talks a lot about his experience as vice president with President Obama and really leaning into that credential. And so there are very competing visions for the party. And I asked Joe Biden, too, if Democrats had been underestimating Bernie Sanders, because there does seem to be this new kind of sense of urgency to try and stop him. But remember, he's been running and building out an organization that served him well over the past few years. And I think we're going to see that play out tomorrow, perhaps, in California.
Absolutely. And you're there in Houston, Texas. We know that Sanders is leading by about 4 points. It's within the margin of error. I want to play another thing that Joe Biden said to you when you asked if he's making any changes to his campaign heading into Super Tuesday.
How have you changed the campaign heading into Super Tuesday?
It's a matter of addition. What happens in campaigns is that as you move forward, you add people, you add good people. Not that there's bad people you had, but you increase the competence as you move forward. And we've done that. And look, this is just in the last couple of days, we've raised a couple $1 million. We've raised over, I think it's now $13 million just since the race in South Carolina. So I think there's a real momentum. It's real, and I think it matters in politics. And we'll see whether it's as strong a wave as I think it is.
Caitlin, it's kind of hard listening to him to tell what expectations he's really setting up for how his campaign is expected to do on Super Tuesday. What can you tell us?
That's right. Well, he had come under criticism from his longtime ally James Clyburn, the majority whip and South Carolina congressman who had endorsed him and really helped him over the finish line in South Carolina, who said that parts of the campaign had to be restructured to be able to kind of fit moving forward. And so the Biden campaign also needs to raise a lot of money. They raised about $11 million after the South Carolina win, but they're competing against someone like Bernie Sanders, who raised $46 million just in the month of February alone and has a big grassroots, small dollar donor base that he can continue to tap into, a big reservoir of support throughout this primary process. Joe Biden has had a lot of big fundraisers, has a lot of big dollar donors that he can't necessarily return to. So money's certainly going to be a factor, and that's why that South Carolina win was so important to try to catapult him forward. And that's why these endorsements that we're seeing from Pete Buttigieg, who's also proven to be a prolific and effective fundraiser, and Amy Klobuchar, be so critical to the campaign. And it's also interesting to see, I think, in the next few days, and we talked about this with Biden today, again, the sense of urgency in trying to stop Bernie Sanders because of what it would do to down ballot races. Here in Texas, this is a battleground state, or Democrats want to make it one, and they're looking to really rebuild the party from the grassroots up. That means cultivating people to run for office, having lots of local elections and Democratic hands. That kind of thing is really critical for building a party infrastructure that actually pretty much crumbled under the Obama administration. And so this is what you're going to hear from Biden, that Bernie Sanders is a liability for a lot of those Democrats running down ballot. And he said that they have been expressing some concern about Sanders at the top of the ticket. Sanders, however, says that he has a very strong organization and an energetic base that is continuing to stand by him, and he's trying to grow it out as well.
Caitlin, we'll be watching for many of those answers when we talk tomorrow. Thank you.